Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining. I appreciate your time. I find this topic quite interesting, so I'm hoping that you will find it too. This is the webinar is on behalf of Ataraxis, and this is just our generic disclaimer. So my name is Valerie Hayter. I am a financial consultant at Ataraxis. The purpose of today is to provide you with a clear understanding of the upcoming changes of Workday 31 and to help you or enable you to consider what is applicable to your customer, to your company, and what Ataraxis can do to help you. All the information on this presentation falls under the Workday Safe Harbor statement as well. Now, Workday decide what is in a release by following their roadmap development and also having a look at the brainstorms that are on community, specifically the brainstorms that have had quite a large number of votes. And they gather those in specific areas and decide what to put in a release. That is why it is really important that you keep up to date with community and vote on areas that you want to change. So if there is something specific you find is a shortfall within Workday, please do vote on the community as Workday use this information, apologies, use the information to decide what is in a release. You will see some icons during the presentation. The first one is for opt-in features. This is where some work has to be done for this feature to be available to you. And the second is where features are automatically available. As we go through, I'll discuss this a little bit more in detail. The webinar itself, we will not have any questions during the course of the webinar, but I encourage you to put any questions that you have in the chat bar. And we will gather all the questions together after the webinar and send you an email with all the responses. We are recording the webinar and it will be available to you shortly after it is complete. So to start, the Workday Common Financial Management. Account certification. So something that came in Workday 30 was the ability to actually certify your accounts. This has been expanded to allow you to certify multiple ledger account and account summaries in a single certification. And the second one is allocations for pro rata ledger accounts to allow you improved allocation definition for to prorate your ledger balances for multiple or non-source companies. So this gives you a lot more flexibility. Options where you would have to opt in are automatic transaction matching on journal lines. So this allows you to create rules for one-to-one matching to automate some of your transaction matching on your journal lines. An extension to eliminations to simplify the consolidated average daily balance by automating your eliminations. Journal sequencing by accounting date. This is something that some countries have requested, some countries' statutory requirements, and you can change your sequencing rules to allow you to sequence your journals by accounting date. Accounting adjustments for supplier invoice prepayments. Prepayments obviously is part of your supplier operational transactions, but this option will allow you to to reclassify within your accounting transactions so that you can change, or excuse me a minute, so that you can reclassify your supplier invoices as journals. You can also manually amortize prepaid installments. This means you don't have to go back to the operational transactions. You can do it at GL level. And then the final one for this page, and quite an important one, is that attachments created on intercompany transactions will actually flow through to the receiving intercompany company, or this associated child journal. This means that your attachments are right through the whole process, and you have a lot more value of auditability. You will automatically have the ability to preview what a depreciation schedule would look like while you're registering the asset. That means you don't have to wait until everything is in place before you actually look at your depreciation schedule. So you can make sure that it's correct to your requirements at the time. Cash banking and settlement. Automatically available, you'll be able to do a bank account transfer for your settlement. So it will allow you to draw down from your payee bank accounts. You'll be able to initiate it from the same originating bank account. So this provides more functionality. However, it is automatically available. So very important, you may require additional testing before you use it to make sure how it works and that this is in line with your thinking. And it may have an impact on your training materials. Opt-in features of the cash banking and settlement is the automatic bank statement reconciliation will now support a many-to-many and a many-to-one reconciliation of bank statement lines to transactions within your cash account. The bank statement parsing will allow you to identify certain data from the bank statement fields and allow streamlining of your bank reconciliation. You will also be able to exclude transactions from reconciliation process. So where you have transactions that may be a while in the past, created a while in the past, and you have already defined where the problem is, you can mark them as reconciled and so complete your reconciliation. There will be new ad hoc bank templates, which will help you streamline how you create large numbers of ad hoc payments and ensure accuracy of repetitive ad hoc payments. And then something that I know people have asked for specifically is a business process attached to the creation or amendment of the bank account, so that changes, new bank accounts created or changes created can now go through a review step. And this is specifically something I know of a few people asking for. On the customer accounts side, there is a new electronic invoice framework created so that you can develop electronic customer invoicing to go directly to your customers rather than creating your standard invoices and mailing them or emailing them out. This is a change to integration. It's automatically available, but obviously there will need to be some work in terms of identifying the addresses and how the electronic invoices will be sent. Opt-in features. There is a customer portal created so that you can create customer contact portal logins, and the customers can go and review their invoices and statements themselves. This is especially valuable when you have larger customers. A feature to record customer overpayments against customer payments that have on account. This is overpayment is always an issue on how to manage it. This new feature should be able to simplify this for you. And then for those of you that use lockbox facilities, there's a customer lockbox payment integration. again, to help you automate and streamline how you send payments. And revenue. There is an opt-in feature, which is on intercompany transfer pricing, which will automatically create the transactions for direct intercompany invoices. So you don't need to manually process the transaction pricing and calculations. Having looked at this feature, I think that this can be very handy and maybe something that you want to have a look at yourselves. I'm now coming to the area of expenses, and I'm going to spend a bit more time on this area than on other areas because there is a lot more going on in expenses. As I said at the start of the webinar, Workday have a roadmap that they work to and include changes on. Expenses has been changed quite a lot. So I would encourage you to take very close attention to the changes that have been made on expenses. So automatically available is credit card integrations to be able to populate your merchant address and document number on your expense report lines. Also automatically available is the changes to the expense report user interface. And this looks quite different. There are a lot of new, really useful features have been brought in here. And this is the one area, if there's no area that you have a look at, this is the one area that you really do need to have a look at. It has been available as an opt-in, but will automatically change to available as soon as Workday 31 comes in, which is September the 8th. The screen will look very different. The features will be different. So your users will need to know about these changes. You will need to probably do some testing to ensure you understand where the changes are, and there is most definitely an impact on any training materials. So to summarize the changes, I'm going to summarize and then I'm actually going to have a look at a couple of screens. Multi-currency is always assumed. So that multi-currency flag that you have on the header, it will no longer be there, no longer need to be. While you're entering expense lines, if you see that there is an error in the header, you will be allowed to go back to the header to make the changes without losing the expense line details. That was certainly quite a frustration. That once something went wrong in expenses, you had to stop entering your data and start from scratch again. Sorry, I see a typo here. When entering expense lines, there will be 3 tabs: header, attachment, and expense lines. And I will show you and discuss through them a little bit later. There is a special add icon on expense line instead of the plus. Most importantly, and I think the best feature of the lot, is the detail of each expense line is saved as you move to the next line. So if you hit errors further on, you don't lose that information. Expense lines are listed on the left side of the screen, so it is easier to see what you have entered. When there is an error on an expense line, on that expense line list on the left-hand side, it will show you which expense lines are in error. Now, I know one of the things with many expense lines is it was very difficult to identify the error message against the expense line that was giving a problem. This will show immediately where you have problems and what to look at. Expense lines will be able to be sorted, so they can be in a logical sequence, easier to review. You'll be able to select an expense line as a non-recurring charge, and then check if it is billable or personal expense. And probably the best feature of all, you will be able to save for later on your expense report, even though it has errors on it. So no longer the frustration of spending a half an hour entering your expense lines, and then only to find there's an error that you can't resolve at the time and losing all that time. So the expense line header will have this information. You can see the 3 tabs, header, attachment, and expense lines. And you can see that the multi-currency tab has gone. Should you decide that you should have enabled tax, for example, you can click on the edit on the header and go back and change that information or change your report date. Change your reimbursement type. And this is quite a busy looking screen, but when you get used to it, you'll see how much value it is. This is what your expense line screen is going to look at. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see the new add button instead of the plus. And down the left-hand side, you can see the expense lines that have already been entered. And for hotel accommodations, you can see that that has an error on it. So it's actually shown up with a red dot with an exclamation mark in it. This is going to make it a good deal easier to be able to identify the error lines that you need to review. You can see that it allows sorting by grouping label, expense item, description or memo, the total amount, the expense report line date, and the indicator. The same rules will apply in terms of your validation against your expense lines, but the important thing I think here is that the screen looks very different, but now you will be able to enter expense reports. And most importantly, even if there are errors, you will be able to save for later. Now the opt-in expense options. Remember that the change to the expense report is automatically available, so it will affect your users immediately on the 8th of September. But here are some opt-in features. You can reassign expense credit card transactions to different expense payees on corporate expense credit cards. So that means that you can ensure that the credit card expense is applied to the correct employee. There are 5 additional Boolean type and 5 text type expense item attributes. So you have more flexibility of configuring this to meet your individual company requirements using these additional expense item attributes. This will allow you to slice and dice your expenses differently, bring in new rules against your expenses. So really quite an important new feature. And you'll be able to create spend authorizations for external committee members in order to reimburse visitors or guests. The value of this is where you have, for example, somebody in for an interview, something like that, where you want to have a spend authorization and pay the money without having to log them into the system in any specific way. So I think you will agree that the expenses is an area that is very important to have a look at, and a lot of value has been added. On the supplier accounts, you will be able to enter tax information on supplier invoices using the supplier portal. Now, I don't know how many of you use the supplier portal, but it certainly will help you with inputting invoices, really edit them afterwards. And another feature that I know that people have asked for is supplier invoice zero cost lines. So to be able to document additional things you're getting, for example, if you've ordered some samples from a supplier or additional things that they're providing for you, you'll be able to now reflect that on the invoice, so you can actually track it a lot better. And the opt-in feature is that you'll be able to assign roles to supplier contacts to be able to control access to tasks on supplier portal. So you'd be able to assign a role to a supplier contact maybe for their finance department, but also assign a role maybe for their sales department. And then there are some additional reports on payment practices and performance, and this supports the UK changes, regulatory changes. On tax, the tax reporting capabilities have been expanded so that when you change or cancel approved taxable documents after the ledger period closes, you'll be able to report on this accurately. Obviously, this will impact your tax reporting, and so testing is required, and it will impact any custom tax reports and tax declarations that you have set up. This is automatically available. So again, from September, be very aware of any tax reporting and the implication of this change on the tax reporting. Cross-functional changes. These are just changes that apply to all areas of Workday. On composite reports, you'll be able to duplicate columns and rows with cells in your reporting. The dashboard tabs will be expanding, so you will now be allowed to have a maximum of 6 tabs for information in 6 or more worklets, so 36 tabs in your reporting analytics on your dashboard. On the business process, you'll be able to have control over the attachments by enabling you to delete and upload attachments on business processes. The name W Drive in the drop-down list on the right-hand side of your screen will now change to My Reports. The EIB, or Enterprise Interface Builder, has been given improved performance for the spreadsheet generation with data. For any of you that use those, although I don't think that is too widely used. And on scheduled processes, there's an improved schedulers, which adds new options for scheduling the launch of background processes. So you're able to save time and ensure that one process completes before another launches. There's also improved report fields for the scheduled processes, so you can monitor and control resource usage. And I've taken a lot less time than I had expected to take. Thank you for joining the webinar. We have recorded the session, and this recording will be available to you soon. And Ataraxis will contact you to find out if you have any specific questions regarding the webinar. Thank you for your time.